Well, welcome, Maria. This is our third of this fellow spotlight or fellows in focus, as we're calling it. And so we'd love to kind of get to know you and share your story about how your upbringing, your interests, and then kind of future career plans. So that's what we'll cover here. But first, let's start with how you got here. So tell us about your upbringing.
Yeah, let's see. So very fitting since I'm actually home with my parents this week.
Good.
Um, so I grew up in Colombia, South America. Moved to the States when I was in high school. So we moved to New Jersey. So that was quite the shock. Totally different. I mean, I grew up in like the coast of Colombia, so like very warm year round, and then New Jersey was like this massive shock. Um, but yeah, so we moved and then, lived there for many years. I did high school, undergrad there. And then my parents moved to Georgia many years ago, so that's home now. And from there I kind of bounced around all over the country. I lived in Miami for a while. It took 4 years off between undergrad and med school to do cancer disparity research. So I did that at the University of Miami. And then I lived in Chicago for another year doing the same work. My PI actually took a job at Northwestern, so I moved there to work with him. And then I went to Utah for medical school, and then Georgia for residency so that I could be close to my family. So my residency program was like 7 minutes down the street from my parents' house. Um, and then Minnesota for fellowship. My husband is from Minnesota. So that was the one of the big draws. But my upbringing was, I have a very, I mean, if you know anything about the South American culture, it's just like South American in your face. I mean, like you walk into my house and you are in Colombia, like Spanish and Latin food, and there's music playing all the time. And like random people show up at any hour of the day to just like hang out. So it's a very fun upbringing, like very positive, like the happiest people you'll ever meet. And
Yeah,
I
it
think
sounds
that
very
had,
vibrant.
yeah, and honestly, I think that had it's to this day, I think that's had the biggest influence in my life because I think I am a very positive person. And I think it's carried on through everything I do and how I approach life in general. Because of that, really, just like nothing is a problem to them. It's shocking, but like
That's
everything
a
is
that's a
like,
great mindset. I love it.
it really is. Like for them, it's like, oh, we'll figure out something. Like it's just like life is just good always. No matter if it's even if it's something really bad, they're just like, it's okay. So that's the gist of my upbringing.
Got it. How's the weather in Georgia right now?
It's actually cold, but I know it's cold like all in like everywhere. It's like in the 30s.
Yeah, it seemed like
Actually,
it was
yesterday it was like low 20s, but yeah, not too bad.
yeah, it seemed like it was kind of getting a cold snap too with my family in Tennessee. They were saying the same.
Yeah.
We have blizzard warnings here, so at least you're not in
Yeah,
that.
I know. I saw that. We got out right on time, so
Yeah, that's
that
good.
worked. Yeah.
So it sounds like you had some sense of medicine maybe before you actually kind of get into med school, but how did you decide medicine versus some other field?
Yeah, so I really was one of those people. I wanted to be a doctor since I could remember. I mean, my mom said that since I was like 3, I said I wanted to be a doctor. And so that I grew up with that. That was just my goal in life. Um, and I think really when we moved to this country, it was really, really difficult. Um, we didn't have a lot, and so becoming a doctor seemed so almost impossible that I think I just became like fixated on it. And so that was just my anchor through everything, like all the struggles and everything that I saw my family go through and that I even went through was that I needed to achieve this goal of becoming a doctor. So I just never wavered. Like that was just my goal. I had, my grandmother had breast cancer when I was like very young. I think I was like 9 or 10. Um, and so I think that was like my initial, like one of my initial just I guess exposures to medicine. And then when we moved to the United States, she was diagnosed again with cancer, and I walked her through that cancer journey. She didn't speak English, and I did, so I translated and I served that role. And so I think even at that point, it was like, okay, I want to become a doctor, and I want to be a cancer doctor that takes care of patients like her. So I think back when I was like 14, I was like, I'm taking care of Hispanic patients with cancer.
Got
That's
it.
what I'm still doing now. Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually was going to lead me to that next question. I think you answered it to some extent, was why hematology oncology? But it sounds like that personal experience really directed you that way.
Yeah, it really did. And then, when I graduated from undergrad, or my last year of undergrad, I was trying to figure out like who studies cancer in the Hispanic community. And so I just Googled. And so I found this researcher in Miami. And so I started working for him. And so what going into medical school, I was pretty set on it. I loved OB-GYN, so I almost did that because I really love women's health. But at the end of the day, like I had to go with my initial gut, my love for oncology. So I knew I wanted to do that for a very long time.
Yeah, and tell us more about choosing Minnesota. Why here?
Yeah, so let's see. So I had two kids in residency. So I had my first one at the end of my intern year, and then my second one, my third year of residency. And so obviously that's a lot. And I think a lot of that, burden of everything really fell on my husband for a long time. And so when it came to fellowship, I really wanted to make sure that we were somewhere where we had support because I knew that again, I was going to be so busy. And so I only applied to programs where, well, first and foremost, like where I knew I was going to get good training. And then somewhere where we had family or friends around. And so my husband is from Minnesota, his whole family's there. So Minnesota very quickly became one of our top choices. I had also lived in the Midwest before when I lived in Chicago, and I really enjoyed the culture. And to this day, the Midwest is just one of my favorite places to be. And so that made sense. And I only applied to programs that had cancer disparities, T32s, which is not a lot. There's only there's not that many in the country. So Minnesota was one of them. So early on, like before, like I think I applied and then I emailed the program directors for the T32 right away because I was pretty sad on doing that.
Well, good. Well, we're glad you're here, and it is a vibrant culture up here. It's different than the Colombian culture, but vibrant
It
nonetheless.
is. Yeah, it is. But people always say like the whole Minnesota nice thing. And
Mhm.
like I've heard that it's like this thing where it's like not that it's fake, but it's like a maybe more superficial sort of nice, but I don't care. Like the thing is my day-to-day is very pleasant because people are so nice. And
Mhm.
I will take that. I love that.
Well, great. Well, you told us about the T32 and the cancer disparities, and it sounds like that's a big focus for you. Tell us more about your research.
Yeah, so over the last, number of years, a lot of what I've done is looking at just the whole cancer care continuum of Hispanic cancer patients in the country. I've done a lot of work with breast cancer patients, as well as colorectal cancer patients, but really because I love women's health, breast cancer is my biggest interest. Previously I had done a lot of quality of life work. So a lot of my work involved working with psychologists, looking more of the psychosocial aspect of cancer care. How can we improve the psychosocial aspect of care for a lot of our patients, especially patients that don't have the same access than some of our other patients. So where there's so many language barriers, cultural barriers. So I've always looked at how can we improve that care. Now that I'm in Minnesota, I'm looking at the whole continuum. So I'm looking at from screening all the way to more the survivorship part of it. Um, a lot of the work that I do is really tailored to where you live because disparities are different in every single state. And so, in Minnesota in particular, there is a huge gap of just in this first step of screening. So Hispanic women in the state have the lowest rate of screening compared to every other race. So I'm looking at how can we improve screening rates, and then again, how can we improve the time from screening to actual diagnosis, and then from diagnosis to treatment. A lot of the interventions that I do to achieve this is with the help of patient navigators or community health workers. So a lot of my work has involved training community health workers, so lay people, training them into, about cancer and how they can help bridge that gap, right? So how can they go out in the community and teach a lot of our population, about screening guidelines and about resources, and how can they bring them to the actual academic centers or the, clinics and whatnot. So it's a lot of, I almost say it's a lot of like PR work almost. Like I go to a lot of events and I'm very much in the community. So a lot of my research really is like, if you look at my schedule, it's like I have a meeting with the director of this community organization, and then we have an event at 7 p.m. about, so it's a lot of networking, which I love.
That's
So
great. Yeah.
yeah.
And we have, and particularly other immigrant communities too, and refugee communities. I mean, I think those are other big gaps.
Oh yeah,
that,
for sure.
the Twin Cities are probably
Yeah,
unmet.
for sure. Yeah, there's definitely lots of gaps, and there's lots of work to be done. When last year when I was trying to get a sense of what I wanted to do, I wasn't sure if maybe I should do broader, populations, just because I know the Hispanic population is so niche. But really what I found was that there's not a lot of people that do this type of work in our community, and so there's a lot of need. So I will say that I've been so embraced by a lot of the community organizations, and it's been really neat. So I've really enjoyed it. We just submitted a big grant, like a 4-year grant, with a SID, which is the Hispanic organization in the Twin Cities, that they do a lot of advocacy work and everything. So the work has moved so much faster than I'm used to because there is such a need. So
That's great.
That's been awesome. Yeah.
Who do you consider to be your mentor, or multiple?
So I have a couple of people. Dr. Blaze, Ann Blaze is definitely one of them. She has done a lot of quality of life work in the past. And so before I think when I got offered an interview for the fellowship, I requested to talk to her because I knew that we had similar work. So she's been really a great mentor. We have one of our new faculty, breast cancer oncologist, Dame Dosa, who I've known from, so we're part of this like larger lab that does just cancer disparities in the whole country. And so we're part of this big lab. So I knew her through that. So she's been a really great, because she just graduated fellowship. So it's nice to have that one person that's like one step ahead. So she's definitely one of them. And then I have a couple of people like Rebecca Pratt from the School of Public Health, and she helps me do more of the community engagement piece. So I would say those 3 right now in Minnesota. And then I have people who have been helping me since I was 19 years old in the cancer disparity world. So they're also my mentors.
Well, it's really valuable to have, like you said, those different levels of, Anne, who's been doing it for a very long time and has a lot of leadership work within the university as well. And then Dame, who's closer to your training level. And so you can kind of see, okay, this is what the next step looks like.
Yeah.
Speaking of next steps, where do you see yourself, say, 10 years from now? So you graduated from fellowship, you're kind of getting yourself settled. What do you think your career is going to look like?
So it's a big question.
You're halfway through, so
I know it's an ever-evolving question. I feel like I talk about this all the time, and I don't have a clear answer. But I mean, I know big picture. I like taking care of patients, so I need to see patients, and I want to continue doing my disparity work to whatever extent that may be. I like the nonprofit world, and so I really enjoy partnering with them to do some of this work. So I think a position that allows me to do what I'm doing right now would be ideal. So wherever that leads me.
Well, it sounds like you found a niche that I think will be really valuable, wherever it ends up being. But I think that the biggest thing for me, thinking about this in my career, is find something that dovetails your interests, your clinical interest and your career interests, but something that you see value in. So you don't find yourself spread in 2 different directions.
Right.
2 different directions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to pick. I like so many things. So but I know I like breast cancer clinically, so that helps. And then, I mean, I know I like my disparity world, so
Good.
we'll see.
Well, let's shift a little bit away from medicine. What,
Yeah,
life balance is important to whatever extent
yeah.
balance is for everybody. Where do tell us about your support system and outside interests.
Let's see. So I have a very close family. I have two siblings and they live abroad. My sister lives in Spain. My brother lives in Amsterdam, but we see
Oh,
them often. They actually they've been to Minnesota a bunch of times already. So, they're here for the holidays. So they're a huge support system. I think definitely we all arrived to this country at the same time and we all have very different interests and we've all been able to accomplish them. So I think they're, huge supporters. And then my husband, I mean, this guy does a lot. He's been great. He really has supported me wanting a family and um, just supports my career along with it. So he's done a lot for me. And my kids are like the biggest source of just happiness in my life. Like you can have an awful day and you can come home and they're just are toddlers, so they're like irrational and just hysterical. So I think that's like their own little support system. Um, and I have friends all over. I think as I've moved so much, I've always kept in touch with people. So I have great friends that I'm able to be in touch with. Um, and I do a lot of like I need I think I need a lot of like alone time too. So I think I do a really good job of doing that. So I do Pilates, I will do Orange Theory and meditate a lot. So that helps me stay balanced.
That's good. I love how your family is all over the place because it adds that increased multicultural vibe even more so,
Yeah,
right, in
yeah,
lifestyles. And it's fun to think about that too of
for
what's
sure.
life like in Spain or what's life like in Amsterdam.
Right. Yeah.
So where in
Yeah.
Spain?
She's in Madrid.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking about life balance yesterday. She's like, like people just don't think so much about money there. Like she's like, you can live just fine with like a third or a fourth of the money you make here. Because it's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you weren't a physician, what would you be?
Um, so I really like public relations. I think I would do something in that realm. Um, I also really like interior design and decorating. So I could see myself doing something like that and I don't know, like flipping homes and doing remodeling and making it look nice. Um, but yeah, I think just people. Like I need to talk to people. So
Got it.
something like that.
Cool. The last question I have, I like to ask is a fun one. So pretend you're a travel agent. Where should I travel and why? Where's one
I
place that you
mean,
tell me I should go?
not like I'm biased, but I'm in Colombia. You have to go to Colombia. So I will tell you about Cartagena, which is not my hometown, but it's an hour away from my hometown. It's actually where I got married. And listen, I got my husband's entire family from Minnesota to travel to the city. So it's really beautiful. I think the weather is perfect. It's always warm. If you go during like the winter season, it's like 70s, which is really nice. The food is incredible. There's like all sorts of foods. I mean, there's great seafood, but there's also like anything you would ever want. It's so cheap. So, I mean, you can go to like a five-star restaurant and spend like 30 bucks per person. You can buy beer on the street for like 25 cents. So it's really, really affordable. Um, and the people are so warm. I will say like after my wedding, having so many people come, that's the number one thing people said. Like everywhere they went, people were just so friendly um and I think that really makes the experience the best part. So go to Colombia
I'm
for some
sold.
reason.
That sounds awesome. I would love
You
it.
should really go. I'm telling you.
I would love it. Yeah, that'd be great.
It's
We do like to travel some, and now with the pandemic seemingly calmed down, we're trying to do a little bit more of that. With my kids are a little older too, so
you should go. And it's the good thing about it. It's like it's an enclosed city. It's like in like this old it's an old walled city. And
Okay.
so if you stay, there's tons of, and it's like aesthetically it's beautiful, like the restaurants and the hotels and everything. So you can stay at a hotel and just, it's all walkable. So you can just go everywhere by, on foot, and it's easy to navigate. So you should
Awesome.
go.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you, Maria. It's been a pleasure to
Yeah.
be your fellow in focus here, and look forward to hearing about your success going forward.
Thank you.
And happy holidays.
Thank you, you too.